Here we are once again on the Claims Denied Hospitalogy podcast. Today, I am joined by Yair Saperstein, who is the founder and CEO. Are you CEO? Is that? Yeah, CEO
Indeed.
of Avo. And Avo is a super interesting company. And I think it was maybe two and a half months ago, we were at ViVE looking out over the Hollywood Hills at night and talking about how you were just announcing your raise. And so that has come to pass since. Yair, how are you doing today?
Doing well. All the better to be here.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, super excited to have you and talk everything, healthcare and AI and what you guys are doing with health systems and everything in between. But maybe before that, why don't you introduce yourself to the hospitology audience, talk about your journey into healthcare and background and where you are today.
Yeah, my name is Yair Saperstein, CEO and co-founder of Avo. And my background is internal medicine and clinical informatics. So when I was a resident, one of the things that I really wanted to be able to do was to be a whole person. I wanted myself to have efficiency in my work with the ability to give quality of care to my patients and to be a whole person simultaneously, right? I was working a little bit on the quality side, then became a chief resident, then did more work on the quality side. And it's like, okay, I know that my system needs to achieve specific metrics. There's all the initiatives that we as a system want to do, and we want to be able to accomplish those. And those two, with these two different roles, were leading to contradictions with each other. It's like you can focus on the quality side, and that often leads to inefficiencies. And then on the other side is like, okay, I can try to do things as quickly as possible, do things as efficiently as possible, but then that means that things are not having the rigor or the depth or the complexity that are needed, in which case quality actually suffers, not just quality reporting, but also true quality. And so I was always thinking there's got to be a way to put these things together. And one of the main problems that I found and that really resonated with others was that there is just an overload of information that you have to take into account in whatever it is that you're doing, right? It's like, as an ambulatory provider, right? Like, okay, I have to figure out what's going on with all the patient data before I'm even seeing them. I take just one of my 30 patients on my panel. So take all of them. And then I'm gonna essentially copy forward my last assessment and plan so that I'm prepared for my visit. And with that, I'm gonna take a look if my patient had a recent ED visit or an outpatient visit separately or seen by a consultant and what happened in the interim. Use that, take a look at clinical decision support to guide me on changes that I want to do inside of my assessment and plan as I'm pre-drafting it. Remember my CDI maybe so that I can improve what I'm actually writing in, or otherwise hear that 2 weeks later from the CDI team, and then ultimately put that in, but somehow layer that with my AI scribe that I'm now going to use in the visit. Just a lot,
I
and
don't know.
it's
It sounds
not.
pretty simple to me. I don't
Yeah,
know about you,
super,
but
super simple. And then as a resident, right, it's like I was doing inpatient and outpatient, and inpatient, it's a focus on length of stay and get patients out and improve throughput, and also CDI and your CCs and MCCs. It's like there's so much that I need to take into account. I'm trying to care for my patients, and I didn't learn this stuff in school. So all of this was on my mind of how do you have all of these factors in one? Met my co-founder PJ, who was similarly thinking about this. And the way that we started was by tackling clinical decision support. That was our initial inroads. We were like, look, if there's a way of taking this humongous amount of clinical, here is your next steps of what to do, CDS side, that'll help a lot. And so we really started as a pathways program, clinical decision support. When I first met PJ, what he was doing was building this back end that would allow me, without having as much programming experience as him, to build out this short form, kind of like MD Calc style, clinical decision support pathways. This was way back, 2018 as a product, started to get into more hands, brought on Lawrence as another co-founder. So three of us really went full-time 2020 to launch. And by the time we launched, it was like, okay, we really beefed up our back-end no-code infrastructure to allow for others to create these pathways. Had started working with societies and society guidelines, allow them to do it. I started working a lot more on EHR integration strategy. to be able to actually pull in fire data so that we can auto-populate pathways from, now we have Epic, Meditech, Athena, etc., right? To be able to pull in all that fire data and to be able to write back to notes, penned orders inside of Epic, right? Deal with problem list and coming up with the problem list and the CDI component. So already some of those things had started to happen. And then the LLM moment hit medicine. And the first day I tried ChatGPT, I was like, this is cool. Like, we got to figure out how to integrate this stuff. We need a BAA. Couldn't get it with ChatGPT and OpenAI at the time. Got it with Microsoft, which was hosting the OpenAI LLMs. And so we were able to bring that into our back-end builder, which allowed us to go from creating disease-specific pathways to creating clinical workflows. So instead of me as a primary care provider needing to go through a hypertension pathway, a diabetes pathway, a COPD pathway, which I'm practically not going to do, different as a resident than as somebody that's working practically as an attending, right? And then it's like, okay, if I'm able to have a system that is AI at the core that will grab in the patient data, process it across disease states, and essentially go through these pathways automatically and dynamically for me, and pull in the CDI guidelines. So I have CDS, I have CDI, I have the patient review, I have all of the things that happen to the patient in the interim because we can access the HIE from Care Everywhere and so on. Now my notes, which are done for me, are informed. And so this is like the transition that we took from being a CDS company to really being, it's like a series of co-pilots, or sometimes I even frame it as like co-work inside of the EHR, right? And the reason why I frame it that way is because systems have their different priorities and the different things that they want. And so as systems are like, hey, we're trying to get CDI better, or, we are trying to improve throughput, or we want to have CDS infused throughout everything. If you would put that into like Claude Cowork, you would say, okay, I want you to make sure that you're accounting for all of these CDI rules. I want you to make sure that you have all these CDS components in it. I want you to make sure that you're not ruining my physician's efficiency as you put it in, and then make it and see what happens. We have those. We allow for systems to make it, and we also have those off the shelf. And so that's really the progression of where we've gone, so that it's like, for me and the original need, it's the same core North Star, which has been there, but the components that we've built have been piecemeal to allow us to now really have the platform that serves these needs inside of the EHR.
And that's so interesting. First of all, that's, congrats to you guys. It's obviously a huge use case right now, to serve all of those functions and create this kind of platform. It seems like that's a big trend these days with kind of AI enabled platforms and solutions and those who work with, health systems. I'm curious, do you consider yourself like an orchestration layer? Is that how it's kind of best characterized, or is that not correct in your case? Or how would you kind of define, I guess you kind of mentioned co-work for the EHR. Is that kind of how you would frame it to if you're pitching it to a health system CEO?
Yeah, so honestly, it depends on where the health system CEO sits and what their objectives are. There's three different ways that are three perspectives of the same thing of how to frame Avo, right? One is we are the clinical AI operating system that sits on top of any EHR, which is the best way for clinicians to be able to do their work, right? And it's almost like I use Google Chrome more than I'm using my Mac or my Windows as the operating system for me to do my work. Same idea, because we can handle everything better. Or the way that I'm using Claude Cowork to do my work instead of the native components pulling from the native folders and components of what I need, but to produce what I need to produce much faster. So that's like the broad overview of it. When we are talking to the large academic health systems, the frame is really much more focused on the specific ROI that we often have surfaced at the beginning, which is, as an example, I'm trying to reduce length of stay. I'm trying to improve throughput, in which case we have a solution that we've built using our platform that allows for hospitalists and case managers to have essentially a daily rounder that will be able to pull in the patient data, give them their pre-drafted notes if the patient is eligible for discharge, we have a partnership with MCG, and it checks against their recovery milestones to see if the patient's eligible, calls out where the patient most likely will be discharged to, calls out any other gaps, and auto writes your discharge summaries, your assessment and plans, your SOAP notes, not only writing it, but also with an eye towards how do you get your case mix index as high as possible, because we have access to the CCs and MCCs and can increase your CDI of what you can appropriately put into your notes. That's all done upstream. So you have much higher efficiency. There's no CDI team writing to you or case managers writing to the hospitalist to get, should the patient be discharged? It's just done. Everything's done at once. And then improve throughput, right? So my pitch to health systems is we will improve your throughput. And then how do we do it? Well, it's here and it's part of a larger platform. Or, the third pitch to the large academics is, or, the second pitch, but third way of framing is we have a partnership with Dynamed also. And in this partnership with Dynamed, a lot of systems are looking for what is our way of being able to put a chatbot into the EHR. And, some people frame it as like an open evidence-like solution inside of the electronic health record that has access to the patient data that I can search against the patient data to say...
So it's contextualized,
but not just contextualized CDS, which is, of course, important, but also my patient now has blood pressure of 80/60. What do I do? What's my next best step? What am I missing from my GDMT, from my guideline-directed medical therapy for this heart failure patient? Because we have all of that data already. You can just say, what do I do now? What's my next step? It's different than, hey, I got to frame all of these things. Or as another example, as a hospitalist, nurses epic chat me or message me like, all right, doc, can you renew this telemetry order? Should I hold this patient's insulin? They're going for a procedure tomorrow. And it's like, I got to read through the notes. I got to see, let's understand this. It's like much easier to ask Avo and then be able to pull that in and have the clinical decision support from Dynamed to be able to give you a concrete answer that's supported by the evidence, that's supported by the patient data with source tracing immediately. And it's anytime I work clinically without Ask Avo that's embedded, I always thirst for it. And systems understand this, right? It's not just from a user perspective; it's from a system perspective. Like this is how to embed clinical decision support and efficiency throughout anything that you're doing. The ROI measure from that is so large that it's not even clearly defined. Almost like when AI Scribe started, it's like, this is just a must-have. So those are really like the three ways that like I frame it. There is a fourth, which is when we're talking to the rural health systems. We have all of these different slices. So we have a la carte that you can choose, an AI scribe, a patient summarizer, this decision support chatbot. And so oftentimes the rural systems say, hey, we need all of them. Like we need a vendor that does all of this for us. We don't want to deal with multiple vendors. We want one that knows how to work with rural systems, that has all, and we can provide that too. So it's really like, okay, broad frame, like clinical AI operating system, academics, mostly talking about reduction of the length of stay, improved throughput, the like open evidence in the EHR, but it's not through open evidence. It's with a partnership with Dynamed. And or CDI lift and how that can work with efficiency. And then to the rural sites, all-in-one vendor platform that has it.
I love that. That's awesome. It seems like you've thought through your different use cases and how they can resonate with, health system folks and solving a lot of those problems. But I'm curious, like, if you flip over to the other side, I'd love to hear, like, what are the spots where maybe, there's like the biggest pushback, or where do you get the most questions? But also, like, as a health system CIO or whoever it is that's vetting all of these AI solutions, like, what advice would you give somebody? Because it feels like there's just so much noise and so many different like use cases and capabilities, and like, should I just have my own engineers versus like partner with somebody versus like have a off the shelf solution? Like, how do you kind of think about all that?
So I'll take the frame of the large academics, to start. There is a different frame between the large academics and the like rural sites, right? So I'll take the frame of the large academics. And what I often hear and what I often think about is we are Epic first. If it's something that's on the Epic roadmap, then that's what we want to do. And at the same time, if it's something that we need now that has a high enough ROI that we're going to see a return within the first year, that as soon as we give to the clinicians they're thirsting for, like, okay, we get that. But there's so much noise. There's so many companies. There's so many, you know, vibe coded apps that are happening. Like it's amazing actually, but it's also overwhelming. And it's the same way that I was describing it for me as a physician, that I had this like data overload from all the things that I needed to read through and understand and take into account as I'm going through my day. Like this is data overload. So like the things that both I've been asked about and things to like look at and that I would advise is the companies that you're looking at. So where else have they been? And it's a catch 22, but like you got to start somewhere, right? And so
Yeah.
for the companies that already are further along, that have reference sites, that have ROI data, that's something which you can then use to see, is it worth it or not for us to be able to put it in. The second thing is it on the Epic roadmap or not? And
Mm.
when? Is it something that say like, oh, I'll wave my magic wand and this might happen at some point eventually? Or is it something that's going to happen this year and we need to do it, right? It's as an Epic first organization. The third is the like criteria set of what you're actually looking for. And if you can come with, this is what I'm looking for, and things have shifted 2 years ago, like on the top list of priorities for health systems was implementing AI. It's not that anymore, right?
It's
It's
crazy how
like,
things pat
and
happen.
it's a good thing that things have like changed too. Like we are trying to do whatever it is that we're doing, right? Decrease denials, improve throughputs, whatever it is, right? Whatever your objective is, like you should have criteria for what you're looking for to do that. So if you're looking for, decreasing denials, like what is your threshold for what would be worth it to do things now, even if hypothetically and potentially it might be on an eventual roadmap for Epic? Like, is there a gain that you're going to get from a vendor that's able to provide something unique for you? And those unique things might be proprietary IP that's not available inside of Epic. Like the way that I think about it is we are essentially, right? You asked me for an orchestration layer. So an aspect of what we do is orchestration, where we're bringing in evidence into the workflow. But evidence means not just clinical decision support, also payer guidelines, also your own unique, guidelines of what you want to do. Like we have one system that we're working with that has multiple different payers that they work with, and then they want to bring in all of these payer guidelines into Ask Avo to allow for their clinicians to say, I'm prescribing Ozempic, is it covered? No problem, right? That's not
Very
something that
cool.
you're going to be able to natively get now inside of Epic. And if it's worth it to you, or any other EHR, right? And if it's worth it to you to do that because of your criteria and the ROI lift that you'll see, it's worth pursuing. If it's not, don't get overwhelmed. Have your criteria.
And I think I cut you off partially because you mentioned like 2 years ago, health systems were thinking, hey, how do I implement AI? And now you fast forward 2 years later. What was the kind of second part of that, your answer, as far as like what's kind of like, what are the focus points today that you're hearing?
So it's ROI based, but the focus depends on the system. I've heard from
Yeah. Yeah.
systems like we're trying to improve our CDI overall. And it's like, okay, systems have different approaches to that. And overall, it's like, well, we're looking for this metric, like this amount of improvement. Some are like, oh, we're trying to get more people into our CDI team. We're trying to get more AI to our CDI team. Some are thinking more upstream, which I would encourage, which is how do you allow for it to all happen correctly at once? Like, how do you allow for the hospitalist who's writing that discharge summary, who's writing that SOAP note, to automatically have a CDI layer that is part of their flow, that they can still have a human in the loop, but is done for them and drafted for them, incorporating CDI, right? Like, that's really the streamlined, efficient approach. That is also your ability to, as you calculate ROI, and this is another thing that we're hearing from systems, think about line items that you can cut as you continue to consolidate and improve because of what you're adding. So don't just add vendors, but cut as you're adding platforms that perhaps are solving one use case, but then solve others for you as well.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And I think what you're talking about with Epic is something I've heard parroted across the industry too. Similarly to how an employer thinks about making a benefits decision with United Health Group, like nobody got fired for choosing United Health Group for their insurance, right? Same thing with Epic, like no CIO got fired for choosing Epic Solutions. It's the safest thing. if you're on one instance across your system, it's like considered a competitive advantage. So that's a very real thing that you and other founders have to grapple with. It's like, if we're playing in an area that Epic is building, we have to be, X% orders of magnitude better, or have something proprietary. And I'm curious, like, how you think about that when you develop new products. Like, are you looking actively at Epic's roadmap and saying, like, let's stay away from these things? Or how do you kind of think about that?
I go to UGM annually. I sit in the front row. I was able to get in a word to Judy. I think she had like left out one of the countries representative of who was there, so I just shouted it out so she wouldn't forget them. That's my one word. But it's
That's awesome.
yeah, definitely follow it closely. Also, we have, our health systems that we're working with. And so understanding from them as they get insight too. And really the goal is avoid the 800-pound gorilla. We want to be able to work well together. And that means that we're offering things that aren't being offered. Right. And so in the AI world, it's harder to discern that because it feels like everything is converging as one, but it's almost like, for me in the like take clinical aside, I can have ChatGPT draft me an email, or I can have, and I've connected everything into Claude. And so Claude has access to my previous emails and my Slacks and my Google Drive, an informed drafting of my email. And there's a very big difference. The first one I have to edit, and it's sometimes not worth it because it takes me more time. The second one, I don't need to edit. It's perfect, and I can send it. And from there, I can set up more automations to be able to auto draft it for me and pend it in my drafted inbox, right? These kinds of things. So it's like chart summarization. Everybody's converging. Is that already on their roadmap? Well, it depends. What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to improve your CDI? So then we might be able to have higher efficiency by allowing for chart summarization that's fed to the AI, that's auto drafting your notes together seamlessly with an eye towards improving your CDI, which is different than the focus of, hey, we are just a automations workflow improver, which is more of the like Epic native side.
I see. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then my funny story about Epic is I tried to invite Judy to come on this podcast, and the Epic team said that she was limiting her media appearances. So I was bummed about that. But then about a month later, she appeared on Freakonomics podcast. So here we are. I do want to, because you kind of have alluded to this, but there is a lot of noise and a lot of kind of converging use cases with AI and healthcare, and especially at the enterprise, right? We've talked about a bunch of them. And, obviously, like, AI scribing and CDI seems like more and more table stakes these days, are more and more implemented and ingrained. But I'm curious from your perspective, like, how do you competitively, sustainably differentiate, like, over the long haul, knowing you have an 800-pound gorilla in Epic, maybe another 800-pound gorilla in the Anthropics or OpenAIs of the world, and then everyone else who's, raising money in healthcare AI? How do you kind of think about that dynamic and stay apart?
Yeah, we got to stay away from the gorillas, and we got to stay away from the orangutans also. But
There you go.
We're two physician co-founders who are both still practicing clinically. Like, you might see some bags under my eyes because I worked overnight last night. Like, when you're in it, you can feel what's needed, and you can also experience what is already out, but also what's lacking, and that's besides for staying close to the pulse with your customers and staying close to the pulse of what Epic's doing and what others are doing, and having the ability to iterate. And so I think there's a couple of key factors. Number one is having the ability, adaptability, and agility to be able to move quickly, right? And so the way that we're set up is like with our backend no-code builder, we can add in new technologies that will take hold across our flagships, right, uniformly, instead of needing to build in and out each use case and having that old tech stack that we have to deal with tech debt, right? So that's one. The second is like, and as we think about it now, there is shifting priorities for health systems now towards the hard ROI that allows you to sell to the CFOs that care about that and how to make money. And CFOs are continually looking, how can we make more money for our systems? And so it might be that the CIO never got fired for choosing Epic, and it's just like your case, you never got fired as an employer for choosing United Health. that's not necessarily what the CEO is thinking about or the CFO is thinking about, which is, as a system as a whole, what do we need? And being able to work towards those priorities and working together with them allows us to continually, with our adaptability, stay ahead. And so really our foci in the enterprise systems are, as the beachheads, are Ask Avo, which allows for this chatbot to ask any questions against the EHR and against the decision support beyond. And then secondarily is improving throughput and improving your length of stay and the inpatient side, which
Yeah.
also leads to a CDI lift. And because of those two, which oftentimes fit the top 3 priorities or top 5 priorities of systems, they're like, oh, we need this. One or both, which it's a single integration, right? So then you're good to go and you have the ability to do those. And we've even had systems, even large academics, that say, we actually want to get some of your scribe licenses also, because when we have a long contract with Dax, and when Dax goes down, we want to use them. That's definitely not our beachhead. It's not how we go to market with them, but we have it as part of the overall platform, and find that more often than not, there are some that want to be able to use that also.
So you mentioned Scribe, and then you have the CDS tool. Have you, and I know you're in enterprises today, from a go-to-market perspective, like, do you think of those kind of separate parts of your platform as like wedges into those enterprises, or how do you think about go-to-market? And also on that note, with OpenEvidence being so gung-ho about direct to clinician, why haven't you gone that direction, I guess? Or correct me if I'm wrong if you have, but would love to hear kind of how you think about all that.
Yeah, so GTM side, yes, those are wedges within the academic systems, just as like AI Scribe has been a wedge in the rural side, right? And so it's the products that speak most to those customers. And then we find that there's a platform expansion because they're like, oh, this is already integrated and we have a need for this. Do you solve this? You do. Awesome. Like, let's rock and roll. It's like future proofing for the institutions,
Cool.
as they're able to take our off-the-shelf components, but also to build some of their own if they desire to solve their needs. With OpenEvidence, so there was a time that we thought about bringing Ask Avo to like as a B2C play. And the way that we've really thought about like how should the future of health systems look is things should be integrated directly into the EHR, directly into the workflow. Like if we can wave a magic wand of how do we want things to work, and it takes longer going B2B instead of going B2C and then forcing systems hands. Like it's right, it's a different play, and I admire the B2C play a lot. But when it's like, how do I want it to work, and how would I imagine it in a perfect world? Like, I imagine it in the way that we've been building it and selling it, which is as a platform that has all of these components together, so that if I wanted to use the entire platform, right, on the chatbot function, I can ask questions against my EHR data or against the decision support. But I can also, if I'm using the broad platform, pre-round as a hospitalist, have my decision that's supported if my patient should be discharged or not, my discharge criteria or my discharge instructions and discharge summary auto-written with the CDI components, have that auto-penned, have my orders auto-pended also so that I'm done, allow me to go see the patient and use our AI Scribe or any other, right, and layer on the AI Scribe component on top to edit whatever's there with a final CDI check and a final CDS check, and then submit, and that entire process takes 4 minutes. Like that's how it should work. So all of these other components are band-aids and can spread much faster. Like the B2C route is faster, but they're not the optimal way that things will end up. And we've seen like the way that things have played out with like Apple and Microsoft, right? Microsoft is okay, getting components in wherever they should go. And, Microsoft is super successful. And then take a look at Apple and it's like, you want the front end and the back end to work together seamlessly. And it takes a longer time to be able to start up. But then it's also the Apple users are customers for life because they love it. And it just works seamlessly. So it's really more of that play.
I see. Yeah, that's helpful. That's helpful framing. Yeah, makes sense. And on that note, I'm curious from your perspective, like obviously, I don't know. I don't know if you see OpenEvidence in like their raise and their valuation as like a tailwind for you and like the space in general, like investor interest, but like, Do you think they are overvalued given the current state of their business and level of competition and those sorts of things? I'm just curious because it seems like there is a lot of noise in this space, but also a lot of investor interest and enterprise and clinician interest. What do you think?
So tailwinds, definitely. It's we were asked years ago, are you going to have an AI in medicine? Like, how are doctors going to trust it? And now it's like, obviously you're going to have AI in medicine, and obviously doctors are going to trust it, but how can you make it even more seamless? It's like totally shifts the perspective because people are using it, and like we knew that people would use it because it works, so it's anybody that's been in it knows that. Then the question is like, okay, how do you make money from that? How do you have a lasting edge to stay on top? Like, the approach that Open Evidence has taken is smart. So are they overvalued? I am not an investor and can't weigh in on as much, but the product itself, the tailwinds that it carries, and their ability to really make inroads are all smart.
Yeah, yeah, and they're well capitalized and producing, from what I hear, fantastic products. So I think overall, more innovation is better in healthcare, and kudos to them for what they've built. I just, I see that price, the sticker shock of the enterprise value versus the ARR, and there's a mismatch there in my opinion. But we can move on from that. I'm curious, as somebody who is a physician founder, what do you think people get wrong about doctors and AI? And then how have you built your product to help with behavior change of clinical workflows, or like getting the doctor to actually use the scribe, like those sorts of things?
So this answer has shifted over time, right? Like, going back to when we started Avo, you couldn't accomplish behavior change and efficiency at once. And so you focused on one or the other. You're going to force people to do best practice alerts and flags and things that'll pop up, or you're going to give efficiency tools to be able to work faster. With scribing, the tide has changed a little bit to allow for the two together, where you can have the ability to talk, those things are documented and it can go in. But we've seen now, like, if you talk to some of the complex physicians, that there is a lack of complexity in what's produced purely by scribe notes versus what they normally do. And so they want to customize, to have things in their own voice, to be able, right, to be able to put all these things together is like an ask from them in that world. As that microcosm within medicine is reflected within the macrocosm of broader AI, right? There's a question of like AI slop, and now like things that are produced by Claude and OpenAI and Gemini are like, they can take your voice, and it's, there's like these skills of like stop AI slop.
It's crazy.
So like you can, this stuff works, but there's still the like standardization, which is not necessarily a good thing, right? Because you want quality and uniqueness and complexity, but not a crazy amount. And you want some standardization and the ability to have things that others can relate to and that will look normal and that can relay. But when you have like things that are overproduced, that doesn't work. And so, I think something that people are thinking about now is like, how do you allow for the artistry in medicine, where it's always been, is it art or is it a science? And now it's like, is it either? And where is my role as a person within it? And I do think that the human aspects of what we do are becoming more and more important as AI allows for all the other aspects to be taken care of. And I think people aren't quite realizing that because they're focused on this binary of like, okay, is it good or is it bad? And it's not, it's much more complex than that. And being able to incorporate that and knowing that there should be people where people are appropriate, and that the human aspects of being able to interact with others is what keeps us human and will continue to, I think is like a complexity that people should be thinking about.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think I've had a lot of similar conversations around like the more technology paradoxically infuses itself into healthcare, the more that the human and relational component matters, and like the trust, whether it's between, you know, health system and their employee, their admin employees, or like the physician and the AI chatbot, whatever it is, that becomes so much more important. So I'm totally aligned with you on that. And I'm curious, like as somebody who thinks a lot in this space, and assuming AI continues its trajectory of rate of change and the amount of capital infused and advancement, like to what extent do you see AI replacing the doctor, if at all? And what is the appropriate role of AI like in the future?
Yeah. So here I don't mind being more controversial, but I really do think a lot of primary care will end up being replaced by AI voice chatbots that also have like visual function, perhaps supplemented by like at-home labs, so that all of the data can be there. Wearables will be able to be incorporated, and anything that can be done by a conversation via a computer. So anything that can be done via telehealth can be done by AI, right? So that part clearly we got. The inpatient side is a little bit more complex. So are we going to have more of this hospital at home style where it's like people can come to your house for it? Or is it still going to be centralized inpatient surgeries, Da Vinci robots or others controlled by AI and or machine, like LLM and or machine learning, more likely? Radiology, AI doc, right? So a lot of this stuff is coming together. It's not going to be everything. There's still a need, as we currently stand, for, especially on the inpatient side, subspecialty side, where things aren't as clear. Work in progress, but on the ambulatory side, I think it's, or on the primary care side, I should say, I think it's much, much more replaceable, both because of the ability to converse and the ability to have the standardization in place. Like the stuff that Avo is doing, physician facing, can be adapted to something there. Not that that is our focus, right? But like the way that like an AI doc would work. I think the thing that's more interesting than that is what happens to insurance companies, because then whoever creates and controls that layer has access to all of the patient data. So what happens to EHRs? What happens to insurance companies? What happens to the health systems? That's a bigger question. Is this stuff going to be upended by a disruptor, and how is that disruption going to take place? That's the part that I got my popcorn for.
Yeah, and I can remember we were at that Scrub Capital event at ViVE, and you talked about similar themes. And I think it's just so interesting because the assuming this plays out, the primary care is a commodity, and especially more so because of the current kind of economic realities of running primary care, right? Like they're typically a loss leader and need to be a part of a larger vehicle to kind of sustain. But at the same time, they're also such an important acquisition vehicle, so important for preventive care, so many value-based care initiatives in the space. So it's like a lot of converging factors on the primary care specifically. And then you're also seeing a lot of like AI first primary care players getting funded, right? Like I remember there's that one guy, I can't remember the name of the company, but he used to run like a dating site, and now he like raised $50 million or something to be a free AI primary care kind of layer essentially. And then you've got all the longevity players, right? And all these things. And I think you're right in the sense that incumbents are going to have to respond probably sooner than they want to on this front, as consumers engage with those rather than engaging with the traditional system because it's easier, right? And
Right.
I think that that disrupts referral patterns. And you think about like an OpenAI or whoever it is, you're going to that, and then maybe they're integrated with ZocDoc, and ZocDoc you can pay to have a certain physician on that platform. Like those kinds of things are things that health systems with digital front doors or like managed care players with network steerage have to grapple with in the coming AI future.
And these things might be simply solved by like acquisitions, right? Like as United Health can acquire the leading AI primary care company to bring all of that in-house as the referral patterns and keep everything there. Like maybe, or is it going to be a
Yeah.
disruptor who
Yeah.
says, I don't want that?
I think
Like,
it's going to
who
go,
knows?
my opinion is like similar to how things are today is like primary care is stratifying, right? And so there's going to be like the consumer layer where anybody who's kind of a worried well uses like consumer facing applications to just like kind of do whatever they want within healthcare. But then there will be other chat or like not even chat, but like AI functions both at health systems and payers. On the payer side, they're going to want to use AI in kind of this like consumer, quote unquote, like consumer friendly way to get them to certain like preferred providers, like higher quality providers or whatever. And then on the health system side, it's to prevent network leakage and as an acquisition vehicle for their downstream services and those sorts of things. That's kind of how I think about where investment should go and how AI might like infuse into that acquisition layer. But I don't know. Who knows what really is going to happen?
Maybe all the money will end up in concierge health, which will be a person because you want to just pay for a person. I've had docs ask me for career advice, and it's like, should we only work for an AI company? It's like concierge medicine's not going to go away. So it depends what you want.
No, 100%. It's super interesting and fun to talk about, these kinds of things. So between that and then like the, online AI prescription fiasco that's going on in Utah right now, it's a lot of experimentation. I think that the other side of this is what happens from a regulatory perspective, right?
Yes.
Like, is there going to be a state by state, like fragmented charge like we see across the rest of healthcare? Or is there going to be some sort of like federally mandated policy and standardization around AI? Curious if you've seen anything and what you think like regulation should look like over time.
I went to a talk where Dr. Oz was speaking. I think it was at the end of ViVE, although I'm mixing up all my conferences. And one of the things that he said was that the administration now, by the end of their 4 years, plans to have every patient have access to agentic AI. So the question is, from a regulatory level, is there a way to enforce that from a federal side that states can't make things more limited of what would be allowed there? And I don't know that answer. Yeah. There's definitely a push for allowing for these systems to come up. I mean, we've seen it in like the medical device shift from the FDA suggestions previously to what came out in January now, where they've relaxed the definition of what is a medical device for, clinical decision support and the like. So I assume that we'll see more of that, and that we'll see more of this like relaxing of, autonomous work and AI work, as long as you can prove out that it works and or have continual tracking in the wild, right? So like in vitro and in vivo, that these systems are working, like that should be the way that these will actually come about. And so I think the admin now realizes that, and it's Oz is talking about it. So how is it going to work across the states? Are there going to be some states that will have something that's a little bit more restrictive? That would be my guess as it comes about, but we'll and also fit with our pattern of having, as it currently exists, with states breaking things down a bit more.
Yeah, for sure. And as we're kind of talking about, current state of things, current environments, I'm also curious, like you did just raise, I think it was $10 million, correct?
Yep.
So I would love to hear, maybe for founders or other folks in the fundraising game right now, like what was that environment like for you? Like what were your experiences and, what resonated with investors with kind of your model?
So we chatted with a lot of investors. Some of the biggest questions that we got were some of the things that we've discussed, right? Like, how do you differentiate versus Epic? How do you differentiate versus other players that are raising a lot of money? Like, where's your niche over here? And it's, there is both the pizza store play, which is there's room for a lot of pizza stores. And then there's the, like, we are going to be like the number one AI operating, AI clinical operating system. And so the question is, how do you get to that, and what's the lasting play there? So it's a combo of that. I think, within the environment, you have to know who you are and know what you want, and know what you want to do. And then within that, like, you find the people or choices of people that want to support you in that. And there's a lot of ways to do it. You can go down the VC route, which we did. You can not go down the VC route, which is an option that people sometimes don't think about. And so there's a lot of ways to do it. And then there are a lot of ways of thinking about the environment and I mean, it's even our discussion of is open evidence overvalued or not. Clearly, the investors that are in it now don't think so, right? And so it's clearly you have a very informed opinion too, and those are at odds, which goes to show that you can find
FOMO is
supporters.
real. FOMO is real.
FOMO FOMO is definitely real, but yeah, you can find supporters where it goes. And I think the last point really is FOMO is real. Like when you're doing well and you have momentum and you're going down the VC route, that's the time. Like FOMO is real. Nobody wants to get left out of it. It's not crazy to like raise now when you're doing well as an AI first company that is like poised to, take over the space. And so when you have that momentum, that is the right time. And if you can draw that momentum and give it or drive it in any way that's possible, that is the way to do it.
Love it. Yeah. It's all about the story, right? And the psychology rather than, the human components rather than the business in a lot of cases.
I think
So
it's both. I think it's
yeah, yeah,
both.
yeah.
There's
Oh,
there's
of
only,
course, of
I
course.
mean, some companies aside, but there's only so much that a story can do. You have to have the business that supports it, and then you have the story that helps to understand it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's kind of like both go hand in hand. Like you need to like what I think about as a creator is like content is king. And then like you can talk about your momentum and stuff, but like you got to have that baseline level of quality first, blocking and tackling as a company. So 100% really appreciate that perspective. Coming up on the end here, I would love to give the platform to you to hear more about like what do you guys have planned for Avo in the coming year? What's next for you guys and what's top of mind?
Yeah. So we are taking all patient related data in the electronic health record and allowing for that to be ingested together with all of the stuff that you would have to do as a clinician, and that being ingested too from clinical decision support to CDI to payer guidelines to prior auth, and have that all be incorporated to be able to produce the actions that need to be taken, whether that's writing notes, putting in orders, problem list, and the billing components that have to do with that in a way that brings system money and allows for clinicians to be the most efficient in accord with what the system priorities are broadly. And so with that, there are these new aspects that take into account the fact that health systems and health care delivery works as it currently works. And one of the big things is faxes, scanned documents, data that doesn't live where it can easily be accessed. And that is coming live for us this year to be able to ingest that also and incorporate that into everything that we do. The next thing, which is exciting, is there is talk about being able to give verbal orders like in a scribe, and that it can do those orders. But the thing is, in reality, I would want those to be checked too. And so if I say, hey, I'm going to give you a blood pressure medication, I would want clinical decision support to understand the patient data, take that direction, and then give me the suggestions of what should actually go in. So combining that across our system should be up and live this year as well. And then we're really just expanding, and as we continue to expand and more systems are using us, we continue to get that synthesis of feedback to be able to continue to deliver towards these priorities. And so it's exciting times, now post a expanded team and continuing to expand across health systems. So it's exciting to have others along the ride with us for the journey as we really grow together.
Yeah, yeah. Super exciting time to build in healthcare, and you guys have a lot of initiatives. So that's awesome. And some new capital too. I have one more question for you, but first, like where can people reach you if they want to, reach out and ask for more information or just want to riff on healthcare AI?
Yeah, so if you want to reach AvoMD.com as the best path there. If you want to reach me, just find me on LinkedIn, Yair Saperstein. Feel free to drop me a line. Happy to riff on AI, clinical, or music. Those are probably my top three.
Love it. Yeah, and if anybody wants to riff with me or disagree with my open evidence take, feel free. But yeah, so Yair, one last question I ask every podcast guest at the end of every podcast is, what is one experience or person or piece of advice, content you consumed, really anything under the sun that has fundamentally changed the way you live your life?
So it's this philosophy that you don't need to go and seek opportunities with a narrow lane of like, okay, this is where I have to go and I put on blinders and I'm going to go down that path. But instead, you can see opportunities like logs floating down a river. And when you see the ones that you want, you just go and take them. Don't let them go by. Make sure that you grab them. You don't need to run so far. They'll be all around you. The people that'll support you will be all around you, and just go find them.
Love that. It reminds me of that like arcade game at like the main event where you're like going on the different logs. Did you ever play that game? You're like going
Oh,
down the
yes.
river.
Frogger.
Frogger.
Don't let it go and take the frog off. You got to
All
make
right,
it
I
across
love
the
that.
river.
Yair Saperstein, playing Frogger with life. But I love that adaptability and flexibility. So Yair, wish you the best of luck to Avo and the team this year and beyond. You're up against stiff competition, but you guys are also very thoughtful about what you do. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from you guys and looking forward to staying in touch with you.
Awesome. Same here.